this edition, we examine some of the arguments against going to war and speak to some of the leading lights in the Stop the War coalition. As the sun set over Parliament and final preparations were made in Hyde Park, a pre-demonstration rally got underway. Hundreds packed the Friends Meeting House in Euston to listen to speeches from the likes of Tony Benn, Jesse Jackson, Tim Robbins and Bianca Jagger.
Tomorrow is not going to be the biggest demonstration any of us have ever seen in Britain, but it is the first time that there has been a coordinated global demonstration in favour of peace. And we're a very broad movement of different religions, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus. We are people of different ages, particularly a lot of old people who remember war as I do. We're people of different political opinions. We've got the churches. We've got, oh goodness me, we've got the Pope on our side. We've got the Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster on our side. We've got the Archbishop of Canterbury on our side. We've got the Moderating Church of Scotland on our side. We've got Jimmy Carter, the former President of the United States, on our side. We've got Nelson Mandela on our side. For me, in a lifetime of left-wing politics, it's a bit embarrassing to find. Now,
I'm telling Mr. Blair and his government now, we, through the policy of the trade unions, through the actions of this great mass movement, through the actions of this international movement, are telling you here and now, listen to us on the 15th of February, or we will pull you down.
I take great hope in the resistance of the people of Britain, of everywhere around the world, that this unprecedented and overwhelming outcry against this impending war, it is a movement of thinking and feeling people of all political beliefs, nationalities, religions, united in a conviction that preemptive war is morally unacceptable. And in the face of intense propaganda, this movement continues to grow. It is the people speaking. It is what democracy looks like. A living, breathing example of freedom at its best.
If, in fact, the U.S. can preemptively strike Iraq, the world saying no to such a preemptive strike, then by what authority do you say China don't attack Taiwan? What authority do you say that Pakistan and India don't attack each other? The first casualty in the attack will be the laws of moral authority. America is better than the vision of George Bush's leadership.
Throughout Saturday morning, hundreds of coaches converged on the Capitol, adding to the legions of protesters already gathering. Because of the anticipated scale of the demonstration, two separate start points were designated, Gower Street and Embankment. Some of the protesters told us why they felt the need to demonstrate.
I've come from a little village near Banbury, and I've come because I don't believe in war, and I think it's from a humanitarian point of view, from almost every point of view I can think of.
There's a huge crisis for the Iraqi people. I mean, they're waiting in fear as for American bombs to come over and start the devastation again that they had 10, 12 years ago. And of course the sanctions have wreaked havoc on their medical supplies and the mortality of their children. That is the real Iraqi crisis, I think, that we have. And at the moment the Americans, supported by Bush and Blair, very much want to go over there and secure that part of the world for American imperialist interests. That's what I feel.
I see no evidence of any weapons of mass destruction. Even if there was any evidence of weapons of mass destruction, I don't see that as a reason to go in and bomb anyway. I see that Actually, a far greater threat is what we're proposing to do in Iraq, and the implications that that might have on the whole region.
I think the real crisis is in Britain is the crisis of new Labour leadership, and Tony Blair's leadership in particular, because he's hell-bent on going down this path to war with the United States, and it's quite clear already from the turnout here that this is not the view that the vast majority of people in Britain take.
I think the march is significant because I think it will show our leaders in this country that it's about time they listen to the people, and the people in this country do not want a war, and they don't believe or are not convinced with the stories that are coming out about Iraq and what it possesses in terms of weapons of mass destruction. The inspectors don't believe it, we don't believe it, so it seems our leaders are on their own really for other alternative reasons.
We've got enough sinners here today that need Jesus Christ in the life, and if we don't team up with Jesus, well, we end up in hell. If we do team up with Jesus Christ, then we end up in heaven.
Sign the petition here, say no war in Iraq, but say justice for Palestine.
Basically we're here to first and foremost protest against any impending war in Iraq, but at the same time highlight the issue of Palestine and justice for Palestine. For example, the United Nations is seen to be irrelevant when it comes to Iraq, and George Bush and Tony Blair highlight all the time the irrelevance of the United Nations for not acting, but Israel itself has violated 64 United Nations resolutions. It's contravened every single act in the Geneva Peace Accords, and basically our job is to highlight the basic issues of Palestinian justice and the need for justice in Palestine.
A freezing cold Hyde Park greeted protesters at the end of their march. It had taken 4 hours and a very long walk to get them there.
Who thought we could never pull it together? We have 1.5 million people are marching in London today.
And we're sending a powerful message too, because we know that if this madness carries on, next it will be Iran, and then North Korea, and then maybe, who knows, the new axis of evil, France and Germany.
Friends, we are here today to show Tony Blair and to tell him openly that if one country needs a regime change at the moment, it's Britain. In times of crisis, it is necessary to bring down a Prime Minister. Bring Blair down!
I'm asked to say that he didn't want future generations to say they knew about the threat from Iraq, but they did nothing. Well, all of us here today don't want future generations to say they could have stopped the madness, but they did nothing. They could have stopped the thousands of innocent men, women and children being killed, but they did nothing. They could have reduced the threat of terrorism, but they did nothing but increase it.
Given the evidence that we had yesterday in New York from Dr. Blix, there can be, as we stand, no just or moral case for war against Iraq. But I conclude by returning to the United Nations. If the great powers of the world ignore it, then great damage will be done to the world order and the best hope of international justice for everybody in the world. And without a second United Nations resolution based on authoritative fact from the Weapons Inspectorate, I can assure you there is no way in all conscience that the Liberal Democrats either could or should support a war, and we will not.
We will lose this war. It will be a failure. All it will achieve is to be the best recruiting agent that the terrorists could hope for.
The only major clash between police and protesters occurred in Piccadilly Circus after the main demonstration had finished. Protesters blocked the roads, dancing and singing, and when the police attempted to move them on, they staged a peaceful sit-down protest. Police then manhandled them out of the path of traffic, making several arrests in the process. The Reverend Jesse Jackson marched in solidarity with protesters and sent this message to Tony Blair.
Tony Blair would do well to lead Britain and not follow George Bush. The integrity of Britain in its independence should be honored, and he should not be oblivious to British opinion. No democratic state leader should be oblivious to public opinion.
We're joined now by Pete Huggins, the Media and Communications Officer for UCL Union. So Pete, what's the union's position on this demonstration?
We have a strong anti-war policy, which was passed at the AGM last week.
And how many students were at the AGM? How many students agreed to this?
I think the count was about 150, and the vote was passed 60 to 50.
But that's out of how many total students?
At UCL. There are 18,000 full-time students.
So that's a tiny minority. And what's going to happen as a result of it?
Well, the motion called for a lecture boycott implicitly will say a lecture boycott has been called by your student union, and these are the alternatives. We certainly won't be telling people to stay at home. We'll certainly be telling people to come to talks, teach-ins.
Thanks, Pete. Pete's going to be hanging around to review the papers after the march with us. Meanwhile, one of the main proponents of that motion was Dan Mazzaro. We caught up with him earlier on to ask how the march was for him and how important union support is.
For me, I think it was a huge success. Obviously, to get between 1.5 and 2 million people on the streets of London, absolutely incredible. As UCL Chief Steward, again, an enormous success as well, because we had at least 500 or 600 students meeting in Gordon Street before the demonstration, and many, many hundreds more students went to the demonstration directly, and everything happened safely, peacefully. Everyone enjoyed themselves, and we got to know each other and mix, and a lot of people we hadn't seen before were turning up and getting involved, so it was great to see. It definitely helps when the student union is behind us, because the students are behind us, you know. There was a democratic vote, and the students decided that they were against the war. And the main reason it's going to help is because the most fundamental part of the motion was to implement a boycott, a lecture boycott, on the day of war and for 2 successive days after the declaration of war. And the union's going to be helping to organise that. And we're already starting to get publicity going for that. And basically, what it says is that the student union is going to be asking students, not telling students, asking them to walk out of their lessons in solidarity with basically the Iraqi people who are going to be on the end of a tremendous bombing campaign from the air and ground probably as well. And just to think about, probably this is the easiest, most simple action of civil disobedience we can take that all students, that I would really urge all students to get involved with, and UCL Union urges UCL students to get involved with.
The sheer size and weight of the anti-war movement is very persuasive, but not everyone's convinced. We went in search of the other side of the argument.
I'm here in Hyde Park, where last Saturday hundreds of thousands of people gathered for the Stop the War march. Going to war is not an easy decision. The protesters just embodied the type of hysteria propagated by their main sponsors, the Daily Mirror. The anti-war protesters claim their argument is a moral one, that going to war and killing innocent people is fundamentally wrong. But the real moral issue here is, how long can we sit back and let Saddam Hussein carry on his cruel regime and kill even more innocent people? It's ridiculous to suggest that this is a war purely about oil. America has said all along that the oil will be held in trust to the Iraqi people and a democratic administration be put in place to govern them. These people don't even have freedom of speech. They want to overthrow their dictator. They were willing to rise up after the last Gulf War, but they're not strong enough to do it alone. They need Western backing. If it worked in Afghanistan, why not in Iraq? Saddam Hussein is a danger to his own people as well as us in the West. He's consistently obstructed weapons inspectors and is making a mockery of the diplomatic process. We need to get behind Tony Blair and stop jumping on the flower power hippie bandwagon. War in Iraq is to be a short-term pain for a long-term gain, and the time to act is now.
Well, that's obviously a very pro-war view. Now let's take a look at the national media and find out what the reaction was more generally. Joined again by Pete Huggins. Pete's going to take us through the week's papers. What's been going on?
Well, Katie, as you know, The Guardian and The Mirror have been doing a very anti-war campaign over the past few weeks, and I'd say The Sun has been counteracting that with a very pro-war stance. If we take a look at the articles from the day after, first of all, the Sunday Mirror, there's a very powerful image here. I like this one especially. You can see UCL down the front here. We're quite small, but we're definitely there. And 2 million say
But that's
no.
quite a contentious figure. I mean, papers have reported different figures. What's the
Yeah,
actual
that's
figure?
right. Well, if you take a look at the News of the World, they're claiming that there are 750,000 people, which was the official police estimate. The Mirror have taken their source from the campaign organisers. It's difficult to say. I'd say somewhere roughly in the middle, say 1.5 million would be an accurate figure. But certainly, the Sunday Mirror has been a great advocate of the war, so they're going to the protest, so they're going to play up. I think the main thing they're trying to say here is, will the government listen? They've got a picture of Blair here with his hands over his ears. So, is the government going to listen to this fantastic march, or will they ignore it yet again?
What about broadsheets? What are they saying?
Well, I've got the Sunday Telegraph here. They've played it down. Come across with trendies, tops, students and men with impressive beards, United States Sedan, which is really playing it down because there was a whole variety of people there that day, and they've warned that the marchers may have blood on their hands if they're anti-war. This is a sort of typical headline for the Sunday Telegraph. Last but not least, I picked this one out simply because this is my favourite banner from the day. It's Tony Blair with a teapot on his head, and it says, "Make tea, not war." So that sort of rounds it up for you, really. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. In a week that's seen the largest political protest in the history of the United Kingdom dismissed as irrelevant by the government, it looks increasingly likely that with or without UN backing, Tony Blair is prepared to lead Britain to war. We leave you with some of the words from the weekend's protests.
We will not see Iraqis die on our network television. We won't see the limbs, the cocks, the heads that are scattered aimlessly and horrifically on the battlefield. We will only be shown victory without consequence. War will be as clean as a good intention, best laid plan that has precision at its heart, a benevolent technology in its soul, a warped doctrine of humanity that we justify this war from.